Yeah, I'm gonna click that now. Okay, so we're going live. Okay. All right. So yeah, thanks for coming to the first, right, 2021 community call. Yeah, so we have a few points in the agenda that we kind of wanted to discuss. But first, I wanted to do this like a quick round of updates. So first is like activities since the last meeting. Most of you know this already, but so there was a harmonica tutorial at Transform. We had a talk about harmonica and bool at EGU. And there's the upcoming talk for the Geophysical Society of Houston, which were invited by Andrea. There was also releases 1.6 of Verde, and actually 1.61 as well, because we made a small mistake there. And Harmonica 0.2, which also has a 0.2.1, because we also made a small mistake on the release there. So we really tested our release mechanism, and most of these were due to the change to setup tools SCM from Versioneer. All right, so it was actually a productive semester, I guess, for the projects. We got plenty of development and releases, and also some outreach. Right. Yeah. So, anyone else have any updates that you want to share? Nope. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. Go ahead. Okay. All right. So we had some longer topics of discussion that we kind of wanted to cover, and it would be nice to discuss with more people. So the first one, which I think is going to be the longest, is what to do with Rockhound. And for some context, Rockhound is the package that we use for downloading more specific data sets, not only like sample data sets. But the trouble we ran into is that a lot of these data sets don't really have a license, and many of them are in a terrible format that's difficult to load. And so the Rockhound functions, they end up taking a long time to run, when it would be much easier if we could just get the data sets into a more streamlined format. But we can't do that because of usually like not having licenses. So I think we're kind of stuck on what to do with it, because it's not particularly useful as it is right now. And I don't see at least we don't see a good way of growing the project without just everything grinding to a halt, because we can't possibly test any of these things. And we really can't redistribute the data sets. Yeah, I was wondering, like, what do you have in mind for that we could do with this project? Should we just scrap it, or should we turn it into something else? Because I think Santi mentioned as well that we kind of like the name.
Yeah, I like the branding. So a big part of me wants to keep it alive. Although you're right that the current shape of Rockhound is it's somewhat tricky, because we cannot test it. We are actually trying to deliver some data sets that are not open. So it's not heavily discoverable. So it's not as you can as we are hosting something like Data Underground that has a very nice website where you can look for your data sets, read the metadata, and download it in the format you want. So right now, as it is, it's not heavy maintained, because it's not heavily used, actually. So it's more like a bargain rather than the gain we can get out from it. So the way I see it is that I think in the beginning we start looking at Rockhound as this main center where we can have these little functions to download datasets. But right now the landscape around open dataset has moved on besides Fatiando. So I think that my idea, in fact, after what we experienced during Transform 21 and the hackathons, is I would love to see data on the ground. So I would love to see our efforts put into data on the ground rather than in Rockhound, which is a library that I would say that only less than 10 people use it, and it's not currently active maintaining, so it's tricky. So in summary, I would love to engage more with data underground. I would love to see a Python API to download stuff from data underground, so we can make use of push or even intake if we want to build that API. And also, this would broaden up the discussion about, yes, I'm talking to you, people that has data, open your data, like put a license, so we can be sure what we can do and what we can't do. So I would try to move Rockhound, the efforts of Rockhound towards data underground or a similar project. And for Rockhound, there's two decisions we can make. First is ditch it and archive it for the future, or move. This is something we have discussed in the past, like moving all the sample data sets from every package in Fatiando to Rockhound. So we can use Rockhound as the Fatiando source for the sample data, not for large data sets, for example, but only for small data sets that we can use as sample data for the other packages, for testing, running examples, or even running tutorials. What do you think?
Right, Tavish?
Yeah. Yes, I agree more with the idea of Santiago. Maybe it's better to do that. In the same time, for me, Rotham is a part for try to open dataset that have a worse, a bad format. But maybe we need to talk with these people and say that, put a license. I don't know. You are the old people here in Fatiando, so you take the decision.
Well, I mean, not really, right? Because we clearly haven't made good decisions with respect to Rockhound in the past.
But Rockhound, I like the name.
Yeah, we're good at the branding, not really good at the scope. Yeah, so I was actually really hoping to hear what you had to think, actually, because I think you're one of the few people who might actually use something from Rockhound. Or did we ever get? No, that never got merged, did it? They were having trouble loading the slab.
We never can to test the. We can generate the test function for open the Delta model, but the functions working, except that they change something. The functions works well. But yes, it's a part for try to open this dataset that have a lot of files and merge everything in only one dataset.
Yeah. So the original idea really was for doing something like that, right? For as a way to be able to download and load these data without actually hosting them, so that we wouldn't be, so that it wouldn't be a problem that they don't really have licenses. But I mean, as it turns out, like that's just not a sustainable way forward, because if the data sets are slightly large, then just converting them to a sane format every single time you want to download and use it just takes up way too much time. So yeah, I like the proposals of well, I think either option, like archiving it or using it for something else. Like if we can find a good use case, then I'm all for it. But otherwise, we can always archive it and we can reuse the name for something else. So a second option or a third option actually would be to keep it alive and move. So one, I would just get rid of everything that's on there right now. And I mean, we have a release for that, so that version already exists if anyone is using it. But for the future, we could make it the source of our sample data. And one of the main reasons for this is that I want to use the same sample data in multiple projects. So right now, I kind of want to use the gravity data on Bool, but I don't want to have to install Harmonica just so that I can get the sample data. Or if I want to use some of the gravity data in Verde, I don't want to have to install Harmonica just so that I can get the sample data. Right, so having all of our sample data in a separate project would make that a lot easier to manage, because then everyone just installs Rockhound. And so one way forward from that is that it would be nice to have like an example in Harmonica of how to calculate like gravity from Cross 1.0, for example. Right, but the way to do that would be to engage with the authors of Cross 1.0, get them to attach a license to the data set, publish it somewhere that's not a university FTP server, and then we can if it has an open license, then we could save it to a format that's better for us. And if it has a license, we can then include it in Rockhound and use it in our documentation and tutorials. Right, and that would kind of be a way to have these data sets be more useful beyond just our tutorials. But if we put a strict rule of we only allow things that already have open licenses, that might make it easier. Yes, I don't know. What do you think about that?
So I think that we should probably add only open data sets, not only for, I mean, there's two things here. Like if I put, let's say, for example, Cross 1, which currently doesn't have an open license. So that shrinks the places where I could use it. So even though probably the developers of Cross 1 don't have any problem for me to use it on a tutorial, on a tutorial in a scientific meeting, for a poster, for an article, or even maybe for a paid course, like a commercial course, a profit course. I don't know their will about that, and I don't want, I mean, in doubt, I will try not to use it. So I don't want people to be in the same position of having to decide whether, oh, should I use it? Although it's very easy to grab it from with the harmonica with the Rockhound. Although the license, I don't have a license for that. So yeah. So what I'm saying is that I would try to move on like only open access data sets. And by open access, I mean something released under Creative Commons, and or at least, I mean, if you have an open data set and you release it under Creative Commons non-commercial, for example, we can use it. Like we can provide a good format for that if we want. Although we can also add the license. saying people, okay, this is non-commercial. So if you're doing something commercial, you should not use it. So yeah, I would stick with open licenses. And if we find any data set that worth adding to Rockhound, I would go with the plan of reaching out the developers of that data set and telling them, like, please add a license to it.
Right. So then that leads to my other question, which is, if we assume that yes, we'll keep Rockhound, we'll only add things that follow a license or that have an open license attached to them. So okay, we'll include the sample data sets that we use, and we might include others. So how do we decide which data sets are within scope and which aren't? Right. So let's say someone submits a pull request with a particular data set that has an open license. Do we, like, how do we decide if we want to add that? And do we need to decide if we want to add that, or do we just accept everything?
So I think that I don't think people might use Rockhound as outside of, I mean, if we keep Rockhound as the source for the sample data sets, I don't think people would use Rockhound as we intend now to be used. So for example, what I'm saying is that if you have like an open access data set that originally was in the very bad format and you put it in a netcdf file, for example, and you want to use it on your in a tutorial or a class or even an article, I think most people would just upload it to GitHub or even Figshare or something like that and use it directly from that. They could use Push to download it, so I don't think they would try to add it to Rockhound. But maybe it is. So just in case that happens, I would say, like, you want to add if you want to add an open data set to Rockhound, that would be only if that data set is used as a sample data set on any other library of Fatiando. So I would say, like, do you want to add something to Rockhound? Please add an example in one of the other libraries. Does it make sense?
Yeah. I mean that is the only thing that I can think of as a kind of gatekeeping requirement. So if we're going to keep it strictly for things that are used within our documentation or perhaps like tutorials, then yeah, maybe that could be one way to do it. But then what I keep thinking is, do we really need a whole Python package for that? Which is going to be basically like the functions are going to be basically a call to Pooch and then like Xarray open dataset or pandas read CSV.
So yeah, I see your point. So if it's only for internal usage, I don't know if we really need a package and deploy it to CondaForge and PyPy. I don't really know. But on the other hand, I don't know if we have any alternative method to install it on CIs without any much trouble. Like, we could like pip the repo and pip install the repository, but I don't know. But at some point you have to package it, like add a setup.py or something like that to do so. So I would say, like, don't go wild on grabbing some .py script from the web for security reasons, and also, I don't know, I can see that failing in the future. but I don't know if having the whole deployment to Contaforge and everything worth the effort.
Because I mean, if we have the package, like the deployment to Contaforge and PyPI, that's all pretty easy. It's just maintaining the package maintaining documentation and all that's a little bit trickier. Yeah, so we could just still have it, I guess. We can always try, and if it turns out that it's not enough, it's not worth maintaining the package just for that, an easy replacement would be to use Pooch directly in the documentation, right? So instead of doing instead of calling like rockhound fetch this or that, we could just do pooch.retrieve and then give it the name, or give it the URL. Though that is harder to type if we're teaching a tutorial because you have to remember the URL. So that's might not be ideal, but yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for this actually.
So having the URL hard-coded, it also has the problem of the host. Like if we change the host of the file for some reason, every code for that would be deprecated without any warning or something. So having a function in Rockhound, if the host changes, we can easily change the URL inside the registry. I don't know. But yeah, again, I think the coding portion of this is way simpler, and the hard part of this is moving towards solving the real problem here, that is open data sets. So it's like all the detour would try to make to avoid saying, people, please open your data sets. We're creating all these problems with creating a lot of functions that are very hard to test and a code that is hard to maintain. And yeah, I think that we have to tackle the big issue here, which is we have to have open data sets available in, at least in good, I mean, if you can, if anyone that has an open data set and makes it available through an open license, although they don't have it in a very nice format, no problem. We can work on that. I mean, we can offer our service for free. Like, I can grab your data set and put it in a netcdf file and just host that in Fixtures, or something like that. But once you have put a license on it, I'm sure that I'm allowed to do that. Otherwise, I don't know if you are going to sue me in the future or not.
Okay, so it sounds like an okay plan would be to keep the package, delete everything that's on there, move our sample data sets to Rockhound, and maybe add some of the data sets for the tutorials. All right, so anything we used in the tutorials that is not in one of the packages already, we could add something to Rockhound to allow it. So this would all kind of limit the size of the data sets we put in Rockhound. So we're not going to put like the whole eTOPL one there, because it's we don't want to offload that on the CI of every single package we develop. Right, and then we can try to move on from there. Does that sound okay? Does anyone or Agustina or Santi, do you have any closing remarks for the Rockhound discussion? Okay, so let me just write this down. But go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was about to say that. Yeah, so currently Rockhound also was a place to host these functions we spend a lot of time doing for converting some weird formatted data set into something easier to work. So I would say that we can create repositories for storing these scripts, not as packages, but as a script. So if you need a reference to how that was created, you can have it. Yeah, that's it, I think. And one more thing, I think that Rockhound initially, when Rockhound was born, I think we didn't have like the XRA role that, I mean, XRA didn't have the role that it has right now in the scientific community. So having like standard formats for multidimensional data wasn't as straightforward now. So I think this this change of direction regarding the project changes because we have now a very nice tool that we can use to to sort out multidimensional data and store it in open formats. So previously, I think that we didn't thought about creating to recreate the format, to reformat the data into something else, just because wasn't that easy to store multidimensional data in open formats. So that's, I think we should, I mean, it's not like we made everything bad decisions. Like I think the environment changed, and that also changed, affected the project, the Rock Home project. So
Yeah, I agree. It's not like we were completely dumb. It's just that we were trying to figure out how to do some things that didn't exist at the time, and yeah, we learned a lot from doing that.
yeah, in fact, I remember by that time storing grids with numpy.save. So that was the way back in the days.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not like, and we didn't want it to be like the standard format.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think we managed to say like create functions that loads them into numpy arrays in memory, and that's it. You can work from that.
Yeah. All right. So okay. So that sounds like we have a plan. Now we just need time and people to do it, which is the easy part, isn't it? All right. Okay. So moving on then. So what do we have next? Okay. So Andrea had expressed some interest in Molder, which is the 2D polygonal gravity modeling package that we had in the old Fatiando. So this was mostly a bunch of matplotlib code to do interactive plotting, so that you could like click on the plot to draw the polygon, and then it would call our Tawani code to calculate the gravity anomalies. But this was never ported to any of the new packages because it's quite a bit of code for not doing that much, but it is useful, particularly in a teaching scenario, or if you just want to create some quick 2D data. It's actually pretty useful to have. But so this was moved to a separate repository, and Santiago started working on that to try to do a GUI, I think in PyQt, was it? Yeah. But that just kind of stalled as we started moving into other things. So I don't really know if a lot of this code still works with current versions or what that is. But so mainly like the package is there. I think I added Did I add you, Agustina, as well? Yeah. So
Yes.
okay. Yeah. So I added people there with admin rights. So if anyone is interested in trying to get this working, particularly if you can get it working in notebooks, that would be awesome. Don't really know what that would look like, though.
My question is not, I don't know if exists something similar to Mulder, but another package. I don't know. Do you know if something like similar that exists yet right now, or something like that? To
2D in Python, no, not really.
no.
There's there are commercial solutions, and then for gravity modeling there is Pygmy, but that's a 3D thing. So you kind of like I remember this way back, but I think you paint like different layers. You can paint blocks with like different densities, so you can make like a 3D block model and then
Okay.
forward model from that.
Okay. I think that maybe in other package exists something similar, but I don't know. Because of that, I ask. Okay.
So yeah, I remember I started writing that in PyQt5 using, I think, Python 2.7. So yeah, some portions might not work on Python 3. Although using PyQt5 was like a good move, I think, because probably PyQt5 shouldn't have changed too much. So yeah, so that was one option, like creating an actual GUI for your desktop. But yeah, probably having an interactive 2D modeler in a notebook would be much better, especially for if we intend it to be used in educational environments. You could, for instance, you could have your Jupyter Hub where all your students connect to, and they can play around with that without having to actually install the molder in their computers. And also they can publish the notebooks with all the modeling. That would be awesome. Yeah. I mean, not having to have Muller installed just to watch a model. That would be like great. But yeah, I don't know. And also probably would ease a lot of the stuff of having it installed in several operating systems, because I could see some issues installing a GUI on different operating systems. Yeah. So.
But if you're doing it on the notebook, then you have to make sure that whatever JavaScript thing you're using is packaged and installed.
Yeah.
But if I really have no idea what the JavaScript landscape looks like, or if you could do this with one of the plotting packages. So I know that Matplotlib has a JavaScript backend, but I don't know if the event hooks that you need to do the interactive, I don't know if those are exposed to the notebook backend, but it might be worth checking, because like we might be able to just do this entirely with Matplotlib. Another advantage of the notebook is if you can save the state of the model, so that when you reload the notebook, you can load the state and start the GUI with the pre-built model, or the model that you've been building. So that would be interesting for publication as well. That if you want to tweak a model that someone else was doing, you can just load their notebook and you start from their model, and you can like make little tweaks to see what happens.
Yeah, that would be nice. On top of that, I think we need the Talwani code inside Harmonica. Yeah, I would keep the Talwani code in Harmonica, not in Mulder.
Yeah, and I think that's already using Numba, so it shouldn't. And this particular code, I think it had tests in Fatiando, so it shouldn't be too hard to copy it over.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think the challenge of this is the GUI part, and I don't know if anyone is ever interested in learning a little bit about doing notebook GUIs. This is probably a nice project to try. Anything else for this point? Okay, so another major point that I just noticed is that XRFT had a recent release. So XRFT is the X-array package for calculating Fourier transforms. So you can do the like 2D, 3D, n-dimensional Fourier transforms, and also stuff like radio average, power spectrum, stuff like that with from X-array grids. And it's pretty nice because it preserves it orders the FFT accordingly, so you don't have to muck about with like shifting and figuring out what the frequencies actually are. So when you run this, it actually gives you the correct frequencies or wavelengths, and it gives you the arrays in like a logical order, so that you can plot things and you can do the calculations without a lot of the stuff that we had to do with NumPy to get things working. And the thing that was blocking us from using this is that they didn't have an inverse transform. They only had the Fourier forward transform. But now they have an inverse, so now we can do things like filtering and upward continuation. So this is something that would be nice to start implementing in Harmonica. Yeah, because for some things you kind of don't want to have to go through an equivalent layer if you don't have to, particularly if you already have a grid. Then if you just want to do a quick upward continuation or a reduction to pole or something like that, this would be these things would be a lot easier to implement with XRFT than they were in the old Fatiando.
Yeah, I agree. This is something that a lot of users have asked since we moved to splitting Fatiando into several packages. And the answer was always like, we are waiting for XRFT to move forward with the inverse because we didn't want to spend a lot of time actually coding the FFT using NumPy and then redoing all the code because XRFT was developing the inverse. So that's why it got delayed. So yeah, I think and we should open issues on this, I think, and probably put them as good for issues. Like I don't think it would be a lot. I mean, not. I mean, it should take some design, but I don't know if the code would be very, very hard to do. So anyone could contribute here with the XRFT.
Yeah, so something like an upward continuation, pretty much all it would need is the grid as an X-array data set or data array, and like how much you want to upward continue, right? Because everything else is just done by XRFT. And even things like tilt angle or derivatives or anything like that, like FFT-based derivatives, those would all be pretty easy to implement and don't really take many inputs. Yeah.
So my question about this type of design would be if function should take the space domain grid or the already FFT grid?
I would say space domain. Um,
So for upward continuation, yes, I would go with space domain, because you can think about, like, I have this grid in space domain and I want another grid in space domain, but upward continuing. But for other implementations, maybe having the option to access to the frequency domain functions would be nice. So maybe we could have both, like having like a space domain function, like the frequency domain function, and the space domain calls the frequency domain. That could probably work. I don't know.
So what would be a use case?
Okay, let me think. So let's say you want to apply filters. So in that case, yeah, I probably don't need harmonica or anything, right?
I don't know,
Or-
like what type of filters? Like things like Butterworth filters.
Yeah, for example, yeah. Another thing would be if you create like inversions like the Park-Oldenburg inversion, that it's done entirely in the frequency domain.
Mhm.
Or if you're doing flexural, yeah, there are some things that I don't know. I might be willing to get access to the frequency domain part and not having hidden inside a huge function. But I don't know. I don't have a use case for that.
Yeah, but would you combine something like a flexural calculation with an upward continuation? Right. So you would need frequency domain input or input and output if you want to combine several things without doing the inverse transform. But if you're only doing like one of these things at a time, but I don't know. Like we could have that there could be a use case. I don't really use these things very much. So one way to have it both ways is to just implement the functions by taking space domain input and doing space domain output. So all these functions would start with a call to Fourier transform and then end with a call to inverse transform. But if for some reason we come up with a use case for taking frequency domain input and output, we could add an argument to all these functions that basically says, do I run the Fourier transforms or not? Right, so it could be something like space domain that defaults to true. And then if you want to do frequency domain input and output, then you just set that to false in all the functions. And implementation wise, it would just be wrapping the inverse and forward transforms in an if block.
I don't quite like the lack of verbosity of those. Like, I would love more like having special functions for one or the other. But since we are not coming up with any use case, I would say like implement the upward continue in a single function. And if we find any use case in the future, we can always split that up into several functions. Like I said, like having split, for example, the whole upward continuation in the spectral domain in a separate function. And the original upward continue would call that function. So I don't know. I would say go like, if you don't have a use case, don't implement it. And for now, just open an issue to create the upper continuation in space domain fully. Oh, another thing I think is how to manage the padding. Should the functions apply the padding, or should the padding be applied by the user before passing it to the function?
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't know, Agustina. Do you have any ideas that
No, when I try to, the padding is the problem. I don't know. Sí, estoy pensando. Sorry. No, I don't know. Maybe the I think that the more easy is that the function put the padding, but I don't know. Maybe the option, how much padding do you want to use? It's for the user.
Yeah, I agree with you there that from a user perspective, having the function apply and then remove the padding, that's just a lot easier, and you don't have to constantly call. So it's one function call instead of three, right? Because otherwise you would have to apply padding, call the function, and then remove the padding. Yeah. And so if you can control the amount of padding, right? So if there's an argument about like what type of padding and how many cells you want to pad, you can always set that to 0, right? If you want to do the padding yourself,
you can do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and so for all of this, I would say I don't know of a good way to do the padding without us having to do it manually for now. And adding stuff to X arrays is a little bit strange. Sometimes like concatenating arrays can be a little bit weird. So what I would recommend is let's just implement these without padding. And I know that the results aren't the best, but it's easier if we're just gonna wait, and it's gonna be a huge job to have to figure out padding and all the Fourier transform stuff. So it's much easier if we add the functions without any padding, and then afterwards, once we have those, we can start implementing padding.
Yes, I think that is more easy to implement without, and then create a function that we can to call to the other one, adding the padding.
Okay. Right. So the to do for now would be create the issues, right? For each of these filters that we want. And I would say start with the ones we already had, because that way we don't have to figure out the code. We can kind of just copy it. Particularly, one that I would really like to see actually is the reduction to the pole, because it's actually more complete than many other existing software out there, because we allow different magnetization from inducing field, So we can actually do reduction to the pole with remnant magnetization if you know the magnetization, and that's not something that's often found in even in commercial software.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I was looking through the old Fatiando API. So have you experienced with the power density spectrum and the radial average on XRFT?
Yeah. We actually I actually had a student using that for a project last year, and that's kind of how I found XRFT. Yeah, because so he was doing. Have you ever seen that fractal analysis to try to determine optimal Bouguer correction density? So it's you take the radio average spectrum, and then you find a portion of it, you fit a line, you get the coefficient, so on. And then you I think you pick the one that gives you the best something. The smallest fractal dimension, I think it was. And we were trying to do that on Mars, and it doesn't really work very well.
Okay, so it would be nice to have, I mean, if we don't need to implement that, would be nice to have like an example in the gallery. Just to, I mean, that's something that people often ask on how to do the radial average. So might be good to have it there.
I don't know. I think I would add it if we like do something else on top of it, but just calculating it, it would be like an example in our gallery that doesn't use any of our functions. Though it would use the data set. So yeah, okay, yeah, I get it. So we can point people.
I mean, we can add it like in the sense like the old Fatiando had it, but we don't code it because someone else did better than us. So here you have it. Here's you can actually use it on gravity data or magnetic data. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay. So anything else on XRFT? All right. So the other major point I was thinking is, should we keep recording these meetings? Because realistically, like, no one's gonna watch an hour-long meeting, and my fear is that having these things like your face and your voice public on the internet can put some people off from joining. Like in case you're worried about like harassment and things like that. Yeah, so I'm just wondering, like, should we really keep recording these, or should we just, do the meeting, and if you didn't come, you can always look at the meeting notes, and then we could be more thorough about actually taking notes.
So, oh, okay.
No, my question is in YouTube, how much visualization we have of this meeting? To be sincere person about it. I try.
Yeah, let me check our YouTube channel, but I mean, it's really not a lot.
It's
Right.
not a lot, but it's much higher than the people that participate in the community calls.
Yeah, so it's like the first one had 40 views. Then there's like 10, 20 at most. Like the largest ones have like maybe 40 views. But this is views on YouTube. It's not necessarily that they watched the whole thing. So I think like if the person opens up the video, watches a couple of minutes, and then turns it off, I think it still counts as a view. So Yeah. So I don't know.
I would. I mean, I'm not a big fan of recording stuff. I mean, honestly don't watch it later.
Yeah.
So if I want to know something more about a project that is going on, I hardly watch a 1 hour long video. I would rather read through the notes. And so that's why I like putting much effort on notes rather than on being
Videos.
a video. Yeah. So yeah, I would go with now more recording, and probably like you mentioned before, going together and see if we can engage more people here. Yeah, so make it more like you're not being recorded. You can say anything you want here. It's no big deal. And it's different having like we are recording this meeting for archive, or we are recording this meeting and it's going to be on YouTube forever. Yeah, it's not the same.
Yeah, I do have the suspicion that a lot of people wouldn't want to join because of that. But then again, like we are a small project, so it's yeah. I don't know. What do you think, Agustina?
No, I think the same. Maybe it's not necessary to to record the videos, and maybe this foment or not the conversation. I don't know really, but don't have a lot of visualization to justify the state in YouTube forever and give
All right.
free data.
Yeah, yeah. Google doesn't need more data.
No, please.
Okay. Yes, I kind of agree as well that it's probably not worth recording these things. Okay, it's actually nice that we have a few because we can point to those on the website. So if people want to know like what are we like, they can watch a little bit. But I think the benefit of that is not enough that we need to have like recordings every month.
Maybe we can make a annual meeting or something like that.
Yeah.
When you, I don't know, comment everything that we do in the year or work in the year, and see what is the future ideas and something like that. Maybe I don't know. And if you want to participate in more frequent meetings, you have these ones without recording.
Yeah, I like that idea actually. So we could do something like every half year, we do a live meeting like this that we broadcast, and then we just go through updates instead of having discussions. So it could just be like a showcase of all that we did. So if there's like new releases of packages, we could do like a small demo. Right? Yeah, that's probably more engaging, I guess, and there's a higher chance that someone will actually watch it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a good idea. And say, good year, very, very, happy Christmas, and chin chin at the same time.
Yeah, I really like that idea.
Great.
That feels more productive.
Yeah, and in fact, we can make a showcase or live demos without the struggle of the tutorial. I mean, I'm not saying that giving a tutorial is a struggle, but you have to prepare a lot of stuff before going into a tutorial. But having like a live demo of 1 hour, I mean, I could spare making a lot of mistakes and I'm hearing you on the back saying, "Oh, you have to do that in that case," or something like that. I could see myself learning a lot, not only teaching people but also learning.
Okay.
That
So-
would be nice.
So do you mean like we should do like a full demo of the software, or only show off like any new thing that we added?
New things. If you want to see another, go to the other video.
Yeah, if you want the full thing, go to Transform. Right.
Go.
Yeah, but what I meant is like you can showcase, for example, now we have the QAnon sources and, for instance, and the Prism layer. So I can show you how to do terrain correction very quickly, and I don't know, explain the highlights and explaining some of the drawbacks and saying what would you like to see here that is not currently implemented, so we can discuss this kind of stuff more relaxed without I don't know. Yeah, having like that, like I can show you how to do it, and you can say me, oh, but it would be nice if that would be like this other thing, or that is awesome. Should we implement this different way or add this? I don't know. But in a more relaxed fashion than a tutorial where you are like you're actually teaching.
Yeah. So this would just be like a 5-minute demo or something, because we also don't want these videos to be like hour long. So if it's just updates, like it could be like 20 minutes, half an hour.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, great idea. Yeah. All right. So yeah, we could try to do that. So let's say like we do one in July and one in December or something like that. Or we could just pick like random times of the year. Actually, it doesn't have to be.
I would say, since we don't have like a scheduled releases, I will go with, let's make it, for example, one in 1 month. I'm not saying we do that right now, but like choose a random date as soon as we feel ready to showcase something new. Because otherwise we will feel like, oh, next month we have this and we don't have any new
new thing to show.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, it could just be like random whenever we have accumulated some new things. Like if there are releases of packages with new features, then we can call for something like this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, I think the transform tutorial were like something like that. Like we have all these new features, we have these new releases, and we can show you this in the tutorials. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, good. That sounds like a plan. So I guess this is the last recorded meeting.
Goodbye, YouTube.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So we actually have. We had the transform. So let's see what comes out of the middle of the year now. If we get a new release of something else, then we can try to do this one and just see what works and see if it works.
That's something that we can do if we are planning to do it like in 20 minutes. We can just create videos, small videos after every release.
So I don't want to put the burden of making that after the release, because that adds to the release checklist.
Yeah, I'm saying like, okay, we have released this. Let's do this in 1 month or so, for instance. Not at the same time, because I can see the point.
Yeah, and I think I would rather do like a live streaming with an open meeting like this.
Okay.
Because also like recording your screen, you're gonna be tempted to like pause and oh no, I misspoke there. Let me re-record this, and then it goes from 20 minutes into 20 hours.
Yeah. What I'm saying is make a meeting. Let's say tomorrow we make a new release, and hey, let's schedule a meeting in 1 month or so, so we can each one can show off the new features, and even we can ask new contributors to showcase their contributions.
Yeah. Oh, ooh, I like that. Okay. Okay. So ask or invite. Though, yeah. So you have to be very clear that this is not a requirement, because I don't want people to not contribute because they don't want to. They don't want to
A
have to make
video.
a video about it. Yeah. Okay.
No, but it's a good idea to know what they are doing with Fatiando and what things they need to to do new things for Fatiando. It's a feedback for the project.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we could invite stuff like if you used it for, like if you did something cool and you want to show it off. Okay. Right. So okay. So we'll mold that over and I guess circulate that on the Slack, and then we can try to schedule the first Fatiando community showcase, or some better name with a nice acronym.
Yes.
All right, so I think that's all. That's all I had. I had included here some pull requests that have been hanging for a little while, but I don't think there's much point in just talking a lot about them. Yeah, so if you have some time, like if you want to have a look at any of those, feel free to jump into the conversation. I think they all need some more input, I think. But yeah, other than that, then I think we can call it a day.
Okay, so what if the next meeting we make it not recording on Gather? That sounds good. Okay, I don't know if we have to pay for Gather or we can use a free, free plan.
Yeah, I guess we could make our own, or we can talk to the Swung board and see if we can use the Swung Gather, because it's already pre-made, and I mean realistically we're not going to have more than 20 people there.
Yeah.
No.
All right, so that's a problem I'd love to have.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe if we did the meeting in Gather, we have this problem. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, that would be great actually. Like it's. Okay. Right. So let's end here then, because we've been going for an hour now. All right. So I'll close the stream now.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks for participating, and yeah, that was really good. That was really good. Thanks for all the input, and yeah, I really like these ideas at the end. All right. Bye bye, YouTube.
Bye.
All right. So the streaming